Hello, I'm Charles Kovess, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Kovess Show, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening via podcast. This is episode 98. And in this week's episode, I consider rebirthing and other psychological techniques and tools and therapies that are readily available and marketed. But are they of value to you? I've done rebirthing. I've had a session with a highly qualified rebirthing expert. In today's show, I explore the pros and the cons of rebirthing and other such modalities. I want to give you food for thought on whether exploring these modalities, these therapies, could be of value to you and for those you care about. Stick around. I think you'll find this useful. For regular viewers and listeners, we're changing the format of the show. Who knew? Who would imagine that would happen? We're doing this so you can get to the content rapidly. Now, normally, we would wait till episode 100. Nice 00 number, but we're doing it episode 98. The foundational principles of the Charles Kovess Show and information about my background will now follow the unique content of each week's show. So, what's happened in the past week since episode 97? Well, the Canadian truckers are out there in convoy, still doing blockades, protesting, demonstrating in Ottawa. And you need to understand what they're actually after. They're after freedom. That's what's driving them. 90% of them have been jabbed. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, is absolutely shooting himself in the foot, and to now have Canadian banks freezing the bank accounts of any Canadian who has donated to the truckers' cause is criminal, is outrageous, tyrannical, totalitarian, and shows the true colours of this Justin Trudeau and this Canadian government. It's a disgrace, and all people in democracies should be outraged. Now, that's going to have amazing consequences for everybody, including in Australia, because you will now see that governments can tell banks to freeze your assets on a whim. Outrageous, disgusting. In Victoria here, with the world's worst premier, Daniel Andrews, even worse than Justin Trudeau. We, after all, were the lockdown capital of the world. His evil ways continue, and his hypocrisy and absolute lack of caring for any other human beings is beautifully demonstrated by one of his colleagues in the upper house of the Victorian Parliament, Hishalia Vagela, who crossed the floor because she absolutely had got sick of the bullying and the harassment and the physical threats of violence to her and her family. This is the Premier of this state. Disgusting. And I cannot believe that Victorians would vote for this man's party. I still cannot believe it. This evil, criminal, corrupt politician. However, I am exceedingly critical of the Liberal Party in this state because its performance has been, quite frankly, pathetic. Because if it can't get traction in the polls against such an outrageously inappropriate Premier, then they will never get elected. It's time to wake up, Liberals. This week, the Winter Olympics in China ended, described as the worst Olympics since about 1974. When you read deeply what happened and the way the Chinese handled the Olympians and absolutely segregated them from anything to do with China, the Olympics are shooting, the IOC is shooting itself in the foot with its behaviour. If I was a sportswoman, I would have no interest at all in going to the Olympics with the nonsense that's going on. And I have been to the Olympics. viewers would know that I was a member of the Australian women's water polo that went to the 1984 Olympics. I was a member of the women's water polo team. How's that? As a referee. It's also worth noting the large number of countries that are opting out of all mandates around the jabs, around restrictions on freedom, including a number of provinces in Canada that are pushing back against Justin Trudeau, that my friends and I from now on call him True Dope. And just this morning, as I'm recording this show, the Australian government is advertising to people around the world, come to Australia, open up your travel gear, come to the tourism facilities. Well, Australian government and Victorian governments, you have destroyed many small to medium tourism facilities. And I wouldn't open up any tourism facility until I got a guarantee from state governments and federal government in this country that no lockdowns will be imposed, no restrictions on visitors from overseas, rather than this nonsense of again opening up and then on a whim. And indeed, today, Bill Gates is predicting new pandemics. Well, remember everybody, the definition of pandemic has now been changed to be anything that the WHO declares to be a pandemic, nothing to do with threats to humanity. Everybody, please be aware of the games that are being played by the globalists who want to take away your freedom. They say to you under the Great Reset, you won't own anything and you'll be happy about it. I say BS. I say be careful. I say listen to this show, watch this show, and be aware of the games that they're playing. Now, while I get passionate about all of that, I want you to know that I'm delightfully happy, blissfully happy with my darling wife, Julie, who's the producer, director, editor of this show. Like, you know, when you go to a movie, there's a huge long line of credits. Well, Julie gets all of those credits. All I do is the content. She's the one that makes me look good if I do look good. However, I am happy. I love my life. I love what I'm doing. I'm passionate about what I'm doing. And the fact that we've got problems doesn't mean that I'm not happy, because from earlier shows you will know that your reward for solving problems is not peace and happiness and everything perfect. That would be boring. No, this is the game of life. We embrace it. And the challenges that we're facing of fighting for freedom is the challenge to you of, are you willing to fight for your freedom? Do you value your freedom? And in the meantime, every day I've been exercising. Yesterday I came second in an ocean swim, my first swim in 2 years. Woohoo! So I'm in there. I'm fit, I'm healthy, I'm loving life, I'm happy. I hope the same applies to you. So, having reviewed the week in somewhat longer detail than others, because there are a lot of passionate, a lot of matters about which I'm passionate, it's time to go to this week's big idea, and that is rebirthing of value to you? Or is delving into your past of value to you? Well, today I attended a memorial with other members of my family while I'm drinking my coffee, about which I'm very passionate. Memorial for the death of my dad, who died 15 years ago in 2007. And I was having discussions with the family about rebirthing, and that came up because there was my newest grand niece, my niece's daughter, called a grand niece, I believe, not my great niece. We had quite a debate about that, actually. And I was talking about how when you were in your mother's womb, you were absorbing information, hearing stuff. In the 9 months that you were in her tummy, you were absorbing and hearing material that's in your subconscious. Now, I was talking about, well, why would you do rebirthing? And most people had not heard of rebirthing. Well, rebirthing is when you get in the hands of a skilled rebirther, and they take you back through various techniques to hypnotize you back to the space that you were at when you came down the birth canal. And I had that experience, and as I was having that experience, and you had to breathe like this, a very interesting exercise, I could feel I could feel these strong pressure points on my head. Wow, what's that about? And I said, that feels really like what I imagine forceps to feel like. And Dave, my rebirther, he said, yeah, probably. So I checked with your mum. So I came home, and my mum had 6 children. I was the second of 6 children. I came home. I said to my mum, I had this experience. Was I delivered with forceps? She said, yes, my darling, you had a big head. You needed forceps to get you out. And that was a profoundly important experience to go, wow, how good are these rebirthers? Now, what flowed for me from that rebirthing exercise? Well, not much, because it gave me an insight into the power of the subconscious mind, which I've been talking about in all of my seminars in the last 28 years, in all the speeches that I do, in the one-on-one coaching that I do, about how powerful your subconscious mind is. And so that rebirthing experience probably has reinforced how true that is, how your behavior today is driven by stuff in your past. Now, what's the value of going back to the stuff in your past? Well, that depends on what your life is like today. Julie was telling me a story when she was doing some NLP training, neuro-linguistic programming training, about an experience where she took a girl down the hypnosis path all the way to when she was in utero. And she had this absolute insight that of a traumatic experience when she was in utero, and she went to check with her mum, and her mum confirmed for the first time in her life that she was thinking of having an abortion. So the identification consciously of that experience can be of value depending on how your life is now. How do you feel about yourself now? Your past is the foundation for what is going on in your life now. It's the foundation for your philosophy, for your beliefs, particularly about yourself. Do you feel unwanted, unworthy, inadequate, not important? Do you feel unloved? Rebirthing can help that, because when you go back into these past life, not past life, your current life modalities, it gives you a way of identifying whether your foundations of your life are built on sand or water or solid bedrock. And that's what can make the difference to how you feel about yourself now, even if you're 50, 60, 70 years of age. There are so many stories about people who have gone back and explored that. When you go to a psychologist, psychiatrist, they often want to go back into that stuff. Now, in my coaching, I don't bother with that stuff. Why? Because I have found that one new idea can make a massive difference. And in my own life, I found, wow, one insight can send me on a whole new trajectory. I've also helped coach people who have had years of psychotherapy that achieve nothing. And they've come to me after a couple of sessions and go, wow, I feel totally different about myself because I got one crucial idea. And so that's why the complexity of your life will help you to make this decision. I wonder whether, depending on how I feel, whether I should go back, whether I should do regression therapy. Whilst I don't do that work in my work, I have attended many, many personal development programs. In my book, I list all these personal development programs. And in those personal development programs, I have had the opportunity to explore my life. I've had quite traumatic, I've seen people go through traumatic experiences, but I've had a very blissful life. I mean, I was a child of refugees. We had nothing. We had a terrific family, but if you've had a totally different life to me, which is, we had no money, never had any money, it's all those elements that you take into account, including my love of coffee. Haha. So The question is, will will other such psychological therapies help you identify who you are? What is your life about? How are you feeling? How do you want to feel? Do you want to feel like I do every morning where you wake up, that this is a gift, an adventure? And if you are able to do that, then maybe going back into your past to set a new foundation, because it's possible, because when you do this exploration of the past, you can shift your foundation. You can move the house of your life from a foundation of sand or on a floating barge onto bedrock, and everything changes as a consequence. So, if you think you will benefit, then it's worth it. If you don't think you'll benefit, then it's not worth it. Now, some resources to help in your consideration of this week's big idea, and how this week's big idea is relevant to your life and to the decisions that you're going to make this week, this month, for the next 5 years. My song, I wonder if any of you guess what it would be when I say, who are you? Well, the song is Who Am I? From Les Miserables. When Jean Valjean in Les Mis sings that very powerful song, they think that man is me, without a second glance, the stranger they have found, this man could be my chance. If I speak, they are condemned. If I stay silent, I am damned. Who am I? Who am I? Can I conceal myself forevermore? Pretend I'm not the man I was before? Must I lie? How can I ever face my fellow men? How can I ever face myself again? My soul belongs to God, I know. I made that bargain long ago. And then he comes to the announcement, I'm Jean Valjean, and it has massive consequences for him. My book is by Thomas More, Care of the Soul. Wonderful book, New York Times #1 bestseller for 46 weeks. It's a wonderful book to help you on this journey of, I wonder whether exploring my past would be of benefit for my soul, for my spirit. My spiritual tip. I had a friend come around who's doing a lot of work with Australian Aborigines, with the sovereign peoples of this nation, Australia. And he exposed me to some amazing health tips that Australian Aborigines have. There are amazing resources available for you. So if you have connections into the Aboriginal community, start doing some exploration into their health resources. My spiritual tip this week is to meditate on the value of rebirthing for you. Spend some time letting your soul give you the answer to that question. My quote is from Krishnamurti, an Indian philosopher, 1895 to 1986. In oneself lies the whole world, and if you know how to look and learn, then the door is there and the key is in your hand. Nobody on earth can give you either that key or the door to open, except yourself. Powerful idea, eh? And so now for a bit of humour in the context of exploring yourself. Well, engineers, think of engineers. Julie's dad was an engineer. My older brother's an engineer. 2 of my 3 sons are qualified as engineers. I'm surrounded by engineers. None of my 5 children, none of my 4 adult children, and then Isabella, who's 11, no lawyers amongst them. But look, I've got a couple of examples of how engineers think differently. Three engineering students were gathered together discussing the possible designers of the human body. One said it was a mechanical engineer, just look at all the joints. And Nicholas, my son, is a mechanical aerospace engineer, just look at all the joints. Another said, no, it was an electrical engineer. The nervous system has many thousands of electrical connections. The last one said, actually, it was a civil engineer. Who else would run a toxic waste pipeline through a recreational area when designing the human body? My son Matthew is a civil engineer. And here's another one. An architect, an artist, and an engineer were discussing whether it was better to spend time with wife or a mistress. The architect said he enjoyed times with his wife building a solid foundation for an enduring relationship. Here I am talking about solid foundations for your life. The artist said he enjoyed time with his mistress because of the passion and the mystery he found there. The engineer said, I like both. Both, said the engineer. Yeah. If you have a wife and a mistress, they will each assume you are spending time with the other woman and you can go to the lab and get some work done. I love it. Outrageous, Julie. I know. So, think about how today's big idea can make a big difference to your life. A life that I believe is meant to be all that you are capable of making of it. My aim for this show is to provoke you and inspire you and motivate you to examine your life and to continue to do so for the rest of your life. I invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the podcast, and to share it amongst your family, friends, and work colleagues. Sign up for Passion Points to Ponder on coves.com and also take advantage of a huge range of resources on that website. Discover more about the Self-Awareness and Passion Quest, an in-depth coaching program to transform your life and your experience of life at charlescoves.com. And visit coves.com for corporate programs and our public programs. You can access my books Passionate People Produce and Passionate Performance at both websites. If you are new to the Charles Coves Show, stick around for the last part, where I share our foundational principles for this show and my background. Again, thanks for watching or listening. And until our next show, may your week be full of health-giving passion, learning, fun, fulfillment, and challenge that helps you to keep learning and growing. Bye. Well, for new viewers and listeners, and perhaps for regular viewers and listeners, I've got a slightly different story to tell you about foundational principles and my background. Since 1993, when I left my legal career, my successful legal career that I loved, for my new career, I have inspired and motivated and provoked and educated audiences about the value of discovering and pursuing your passion or your many passions. I have helped people via books I have written, via speeches to large groups, small groups, with team building programs, working with groups for 1, 2, 3 days. I've worked with individuals in government, in small business, large business. After 28 years of doing this work, I know that it can have a profound impact on you. It has had a profound impact on many people. One of my core principles of my whole life is that freedom is what makes us truly human. That's why one of the greatest threats that government puts on us to observe the law is the loss of freedom via imprisonment. That's why we're scared of imprisonment, because we want to be free. Without freedom, you and I are not much different to animals. This commitment to fighting for freedom and freedoms for all people is carried out by me primarily through 5 channels. Number 1, preserving the freedom for you to pursue your passion. Number 2, inspiring you to be free through excellent health. If you're not healthy, if you're an invalid, you are not free. Number 3, helping preserve freedom through the expansion globally of industrial hemp as an almost miraculous crop that enables every community on the planet to thrive independently. In this way, the power of government to take away your freedom is minimized. Number 4, fighting for freedom through legal strategies. I'm a legal strategy consultant. I don't practice as a lawyer, but I do understand legal strategy. And number 5, as chairman of the Australian Institute of Comedy and a committee member of the Australian Cartoon Museum, in fighting for the freedom of thought and speech, for humour, comedy and laughter. Comedians are being hammered through political correctness. Stopping freedom of speech is the beginning of the end of your freedom. You must be free to be able to speak. The foundational principles for this weekly show are founded on the formula SA plus P equals S. Your self-awareness plus your passion guarantees your success. And my definition of success, the best that I've found, is that success is the progressive realization of your worthy ideals. This show is also guided by Socrates' famous quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." So this show is about inspiring you to examine your life and to keep examining it so that your life is indeed worth living. You can see I'm wearing my red jacket. I always wear my red jacket for the show because red is the colour of passion, and when you see the red watching on YouTube, it will inspire you, remind you, whenever you see red, to ask the question, am I pursuing my passion? Each week I explore one big idea that can change your life. And it's just one big idea because there's a chance that you'll remember it. If you get too many ideas, then we don't act on any of them. They wash through us. Each week I share simple and practical resources to help you get the benefit of the big idea, to implement the big idea in your life, to examine how the big idea is relevant to your life. These resources are a song, a book, a quote, a spiritual tip, a health tip, and some humour, for the reasons I've shared with you earlier, that comedy and humour is crucial to our humanity. This show is not politically correct. I support certain addictions, including coffee, my addiction to sport, addiction to coffee, and certain, shall we say, unmentionable in polite company addictions. This show definitely subscribes to the view that we have a spiritual life. So if anything spiritual scares you, then this is not the show for you. I promise you I won't include anything in this show that I don't believe to be true or that I don't believe to be helpful. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, please feel free to contact me via email, charles@covest.com. Again, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. See you next week.